2024 webinar on service and data portability. I would like to welcome Luis Eduardo Martinez from the European Commission, who will guide us through it, and his colleague Jean-Luc, who will present the mechanisms and overall topic that we're discussing today. And I would also like to welcome Aleš from XLab. He will do an outside perspective on the topic. And I would also like to welcome Paul from a sister CSA called Speak NGI, who will be talking about the consultation platform that we're using as a backend to facilitate the conversation around the topic of NGI in general and also specifically on this topic. And then there's, of course, me to introduce. I'm Mirko Presser, and I'm also part of one of the pathfinding CSAs on the topic of NGI called NGI Move. So before we diving into this, I hope you're already quite familiar with the NGI. And there's one microphone open that causes a little bit of an echo. If you could mute, please. But if you're not, then you can go to NGI.EU and have a look at this item called Join. And under here, you can find a number of offerings that the NGI community already provides. So we have these open calls, so specifically the open calls from the European Commission. And soon we'll also have the open calls based on the already funded projects that is launching very soon. In the meantime, you can join the community by participating in the interactive map, which sort of lists the community members. You can join the consultation platform, and Paul will explain that in a little while. You've had the opportunity to join the NGI Awards, so this round has been closed and the award winners have already been announced on the website. But you can join the next round of awards that will be launched around about April, May, I believe. The Global Internet Policy Observatory is available to you. There's a number of surveys and activities, and then, of course, the social media accounts, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. And finally, I think what's worth noting is the other events that we're organizing under the NGI. The next one, where you can meet us face-to-face, including the Commission as well, is the ICT event 2018 in Vienna in the first week of December. So Paul, I would like to hand over to you and maybe give a short introduction to the consultation platform that we're using as a backend for these conversations. Paul, I think you need to unmute.
Sorry, excuse me, I had started. Okay, so my name is Paul Malone from Waterford Institute of Technology. I'm representing Speak NGI CSA. We're responsible for running the NGI consultation platform. So the consultation platform is a means for all stakeholders to give their opinions, views on the shaping of the NGI, and we do this through surveys, some discussion channels, and we're developing a knowledge base where you can discover knowledge that has arisen through the surveys, discussion channels, and other reports that have been generated from the sister projects and related projects and other initiatives. So just to briefly give a view of the consultation platform. If you go to consultation.ngi.eu, I've pasted a set of links into the chat box where you can go there. So in effect, we have three main things, which we have surveys, discussion channels, and a knowledge base. So in the surveys, currently we have a set of surveys open here. And I would encourage any of you currently on the call to take on these surveys here. Each of them is designed to be about 5 minutes long. So for example, we have some here on the effectiveness of EU support in the next generation internet from 3 different viewpoints: the technology provider, research projects, or policymakers, initiatives funding third parties. So I would encourage everybody to participate in our consultations through these surveys and also through our channels. So today we have the topic in the spotlight is our channel here. So we have a complete set of channels. The top three, which are based on the current open calls here, the strengthening internet trustworthiness through online identities. Today's topic, which is service and data portability. And tomorrow's topic, which will be open internet architecture renovation. So just in today's topic, we have here opened a specific discussion for this webinar. And also here there's a discussion which is started by Alish, which is related to the presentation he'll give in a short while. And we have in here where his slides are in here as well, so you can collect his slides from there. But also you can ask questions here in this channel here, which is dedicated to this call here today. And there's currently a question there from Sana Lahi, which is a question to the EC. We'll come to the questions at the end when we do the Q&As. So if you ask a question in here, we'll be sure to ask the question either to Alish, ourselves, or the European Commission, whichever way you would prefer. So we also have a knowledge base here, which allows you to search for information and knowledge that we've been collecting over the years based on the surveys and those discussion channels. And in addition to that, we have summary reports here. So this provides you with a view of a synopsized view of what's actually currently in our platform. So you can view this in 4 different ways, which is a roadmap view based on a timeline, topic view, technology view, and socioeconomic view. You can also download this in PDF. This is updated pretty much every 14 days or so. The most up-to-date version is on the 9th of November, which is just basically a week or so ago. So with that, I think I can pass on back to Mirko, or probably on to Alish. So I'd encourage everybody to participate, particularly through our discussion channels, and this is how you can have your view on how the NGI should be shaped in the future, or any questions you have for ourselves or the Commission, you can post them in here. There's a whole series of discussion channels there related to all aspects of NGI. And with that, I will pass back to Mirko.
Thank you very much, Paul. In the meantime, while Alice is setting up, please, Alice, if you could get started. I encourage you to use the chat in the platform for the communication here, and make yourself, you can also use that to reserve a pitching slot. So the questions can go to the consultation platform, or if you have something just on the quick, you can put that in the chat, please. And also, if you like one of the 2-minute pitching slots later on in the webinar, then I would also like it if you could put your name into the chat, and we go first come, first serve. So with that, Alesh, could you please take on the presentation?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Mirko. I hope you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great, perfect. So good afternoon to everyone, and thanks to Paul Malone and Mirko Presser for inviting me to this webinar to give this speech. In the beginning, just a couple of words about myself. So my name is Alesh Chernives, yes, that's hard to pronounce, and I've been involved with NGI, specifically with the project Speak NGI initiative for now more than a year, where I've been a member of Speak NGI Champion Board. I participated in the NGI Forum in Portugal this year, where we held a workshop addressing different topics related to the interoperability and open data. And I believe that this has a nice connection with this call we are addressing now, the Open Internet Initiative within Service and Data Portability goal. So firstly, I'm a CISO and project manager at XLab, the company, where I was a developer in the beginning, and nowadays more and more managing the projects in the field of cybersecurity and cloud computing. And these two topics are very closely related to the call presenting now. So additionally, my work is very well aligned with these calls, and the solutions that we are proposing and building in the company have constantly repeating functional and non-functional requirements related to service and data portability. And basically, we are building these solutions from scratch, and these really depends on the use case in the chosen domain. For instance, in cloud computing, cybersecurity. For example, in the project on which I work under Horizon 2020, from the field of cybersecurity, there is a requirement for standard way of packaging, deploying, both local and using specific IaaS, so infrastructure as a service platform. And there are also similar requirements for the data collection, data in transit, for instance, technical and legal requirements, like encryption of the data at rest or the data in transit. So in this call, two regulations are required to address, and these are important to be taken into account. A regulation on the free flow of non-personal data has been proposed by the EU Commission in September 2017 and adopted by EU Parliament in October, if I'm not mistaken, which is of course quite recently. It is envisioned that it will come in force by the end of 2018 and fully adopted by the member states in 6 months after that. So the expectation is that the members implement these rules somewhere in the mid-2019. These will address and remove data localization requirements and ensure that services and service providers specifically should provide free flow of non-personal data. And with that, it should open new opportunities for new innovative services within the EU. So regarding the personal data regulation, GDPR, so the right to data portability is one of the rights enforced by it. And it is already well known since we all need to implement it in already existing solutions. It provides the right to data subjects, to citizens, to obtain the data which a data controller holds on them. And the subject can reuse it for their own purposes. So like in this slide, the right to data portability, Article 20, Section 2 says that the data subject shall have the right to have the personal data transmitted directly from one controller to another, where technically feasible, which is quite loosely defined. So in this slide, it can be seen the intersection of both regulations. The challenge is also to address the cross-section between these two. So both regulations may apply on that particular part. What is interesting is that currently it is not well defined what data this should actually include, comprise, basically. So the rule of thumb, personal data and non-personal data, but what about the models inferred from the data? Moreover, the structure is not well defined. So the data formats, schema definitions, types of the data. Usually these follow some schema definitions defined in JSON or XML. But individuals are free to either store the data for personal use or to transmit it to another data controller freely or frictionless, as set in the call itself. So looking at the rest of GDPR requirements, as a developer, there is a need for a solution providing the forget me, notify for the erasure capabilities, which all the parties involved should be informed about, which can be very tricky. So this can be one of the challenge. All these requirements call out for some way of standardization effort, and these ICT24 proposals should, in my opinion, also address. In the long run, the main challenges addressed are values of openness, cooperation across borders, decentralization, inclusiveness, and protection of privacy. All this will empower, in a way, frictionless switching between service providers and for new business models. So giving control back to the users in order to increase the trust yeah, this should happen, but trust, as we all know, takes time. More transparent services, more intelligence, greater involvement and participation can be also one of the challenges, since techno-legal constraints and simplification of end users' contracts and terms of use are at this point not well defined, how this should be present, how this should be provided. This initiative should influence internet governance in a way, and influence also the related policies. And what does that mean for developers of solutions, and us as the ones who will provide proposals? So separation of the data from the services should be incorporated with the solution, and new tools will be needed to support this. The technical challenges and ideas, in a way, follow the mentioned McAfee's law from the telecommunication network, which says that a single point of failure in a domain can be a huge risk. And it is very important to support projects similar to data transfer project, which might be known to you. So all the big players like Microsoft, Google, Twitter are actually part of this data transfer project, which says that they want to provide the tools for supporting data transfer between all these services. But the problem is, well, if we check the current state of the data transfer project, well, it is not so contributed to. So in the last year, it's not active much. So if you look at the, for instance, Git repository, peak is around January, but after 2018, but after that, the work kind of slowed down. So at this point, it doesn't actually work. So it's still far from being operational. It's very important to support projects similar to data transfer projects, since based on the McAfee's law, single point of failure in a domain can be a huge risk. Additionally, competitive disadvantage. For instance, I was on a cloud computing conference a couple of years ago in London on Cloud Expo, and it was mentioned on several occasions that EU is lagging behind innovation comparing to US for about 2 years. So the development of cloud services, cloud service adoption rates, etc. So here we have a really opportunity to tackle this disadvantage. Additionally, there is a need to support users to decouple the data they create from the providers. So hosting, providing software, for instance. And these should allow introduction of new services, better segmentation of risk, like better security, better privacy, better control over the user's personal, non-personal data. So an idea here could be something similar to data transfer project. By supporting standard tools for local deployments of services in use, we can build more resilient solutions already. For instance, mitigating larger internet outages, downtimes can be tackled with these. Currently, there are many standards out there already supporting more or less frictionless local deployments of services. For example, there are emerging tools like which are based on Tosca standard, so the topology and orchestration specification of cloud applications. And with a set of simple profiles of this standard of the service orchestrator, data dimension can be added, can be extended. It can be tailored to different needs. Tools can be built in order to support migrations of personal and non-personal data. And these tools should address and tackle the issues with different care. There is no problem in this for the end users to host services by themselves, because currently infrastructure as a service is basically, say, so it's already available. Users can use it easily, but the tools are needed. So, in my opinion, the goal is to establish suitable mature technology, commons to popular end-user services as open source tools and libraries. These should support new emerging competitive EU-based and regulations adhering services. And I believe this is the main idea of this presentation. And by this, I would also conclude my presentation. And we're open for questions.
Thank you very much, Alice. If there's an immediate question, please place it in the chat. Otherwise, I think I would like to invite Louis and Jean-Luc to set up for the perspective. Now we had the perspective from an outside. Now we get the perspective from the European Commission. So if you'd like to set up, that would be great. And I think we would also carry on straight away. There haven't been any discussions in the chat. Paul, if there's something on the consultation platform that you'd like to flag, then just please make yourself known. Otherwise, I think we would like to invite Jean-Luc to begin his presentation.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you.
Very well, okay, thank you very much. First, thanks Mirko and Paul for organizing this event. Thanks also Luis for providing the IT infrastructure, and many thanks to Aleš for setting the scene and identifying some of the challenges associated with this call, which is related to something that is quite known. It's service and data portability. I will first say a few words on NGI for those that are not fully aware, and then dig a little bit more in detail with the call that we are talking about today. This event is part of a larger effort to propagate the information on the calls. We'll have, as it was already stressed, a full session handled by Luis at the ICT 2018 event in Vienna early December, and we will conduct together with national contact points events in countries. There was one already in the UK, one will happen in Sweden in early December. So let's say a few words about next generation internet. There are two main reasons why we started this project. The first one is to somehow inject research and innovation funds into the evolution of the internet and push the agenda of a human-centric internet. So in other words, an internet where that is serving us as opposed to an internet that is observing us, as it is quite often the case. This narrative, this shift of orientation is happening in industry and in the governments. At the recent Web Summit, Tim Berners-Lee called for a new contract for the internet, where technology should be developed and to support the best in humanity, challenge the worst. So the web is really a public good. So and put people first. And at the recent Internet Governance Forum, French President Macron mentioned that time has come to think over the ways and means of putting technology under fantastic power to the service of the fundamental values of humanities. And then you will see AI for humanity from Microsoft and other cases. This is taking off, and the contribution from Commission will be in the form of grants and funding. And the other driving force between next generation internet is the nature of this fund. We have observed too often a lot of talents and parties are not associated with the classical grants that we offer. for instance, research and innovation action. And there is one reason for that is that there is a very high barrier, or perceived impression that there is a high barrier to entrance for these programs in terms notably in paperwork. So and another issue is the relatively long time scale of the planning and the time from ideas to results. We are talking about 5-6 year cycles. This is working very well in physics, in material science, in health, for instance, but this is not matching very well the dynamic of internet. So with that ground, we have developed a program that intends to target those talents that are not so well associated today with H2020 and that can contribute to a human-centric internet. So a few details on how we work, and notably for Work Program 2019, but this is a redo of 18, under which we had 3 priorities. How it works. Commission doesn't give the money to the researchers. We give the money to intermediaries that in turn will address, target talents and fund them in the form of small projects and with much more reactivity on what needs to be done, and also much more fine grain on issues and challenges to be solved. So it's in this context we give 7 million euros to each consortia of intermediaries, and 80%, that is 5.6 million, goes to what we call third parties, which are the talents that I'm talking about, and 20%, 1.4 million, remain in the consortia. We call for 3 topics, one related to electronic identities, one related to the internet architecture renovation, and the one that we are talking today is service and data portability. So a critical factor for intermediaries is their capability to issue calls, to attract the talents that I mentioned, to support fast and flexible agile work method and methodology. In addition, there are a number of things that I will detail further on. It is expected that those projects will be selected in June timeframe and granted in autumn timeframe, with first call in winter next year. What the sub-grantees or the third parties, that is the internet innovator, in turn will bid for money, of course, that will be issued in form of open calls. Typically, it can be one entity for one specific project. It can be more than that. It can be a small consortium, for instance. We are talking about young researchers and academics, startups, technology, high-tech SMEs, for instance. It does not exclude anybody by definition. But this is where we think a lot of untapped talent are today. Then it has to carry out the research. The research is done by this layer. We are typically talking about 50K, 100K, or it can also be below 50K. Maximum for sure is 200K, and short duration projects, 9 to 12 months. So this is the whole architecture of the program. I want you to focus your attention on specifics of the work program. As a general advice, bidders should, and here I'm talking to intermediaries, sorry to be. So bidders for intermediaries should have a very deep look at the work program, because this is the basis on which evaluator will assess proposals. And there are things that we are expecting from intermediaries, and I mentioned in bold in this screen. So there is expected to have coaching and mentoring capabilities. So coaching the third party, the sub-grantees that will do the work. So there is the expectation that there will be some seniority in being able to help to put the research in a wider context, for instance, or to identify issues of scalability, integration in other components. That's for more technical. It can also be business coaching and mentoring. So a key requirement is the capacity for our intermediaries to attract top talents. So this has to be demonstrated at the proposal level and deliver a set of services back to the sub-grantees, and of course the capacity to manage the full life cycle of the open calls from preparation web, submission tool, publicizing this, evaluation, and all this has to be done in a transparent way. So communication, for instance, of the results, dialogue with bidders, etc. Of course, the expertise also include the capability to grant a relatively large number of contracts. And there is a reference to the 80% rule for this work program. Now let's dig into a little bit more detail of the topics we are talking about. It's a 7 million topic. It's funded as in the form of a research and innovation action. That means 100% funding. Opening date 16th of October. The deadline is end of March next year. So it's not urgent, but it becomes important to start the conversation of consortia on this topic. Now, this is the work program. I will paraphrase it. Its service and data portability is a quite well-known issue. Aleš already mentioned some of the key challenges related to that across platform in relation to the requirements made by GDPR, in relation with the free flow of data, non-personal data, removing geolocalization and enabling a true digital single market in Europe. That's the regulatory framework that is explicitly mentioned. And then there's this view that we should provide technologies, trusted technologies. Well, the word trusted is not there, it's my own interpretation, but at least seamless technology that will allow moving from one provider to another one. Here we are, of course, talking about the cost of switching, user lock-in, and we are expecting that in a human-centric internet, portability will be made easier. We will be the one triggering this portability because this is under our control. This can be personal data. So here we are going to discuss about information attributes that may or may not cross over one provider to another one seamlessly and in scalable way and in a secure way. And then it can be also services or contents that we have access or we have rights on it, and that can spill over one service to another one, and identifying potential business models, new business model that could come from portability, for instance, by allowing providers to, under the consent of the users, combine data for providing richer set of services. So there are the legal framework constraints, there are technical constraints. One keyword is seamless, because today, today I don't know if it's today, but at least a few years ago, a citizen in Austria asked for getting his old data from Facebook, and he received a pile of DVD. So it's certainly not the best format for data portability or service portability. So seamless or ease of use will be very important, and the understanding or make accessible to the user contract terms, consent management. So this is the general topic that we are calling for the substance, and for which, as I said, we are looking for intermediaries. That's it for my presentation. It's part of a larger effort that we are going to continue in 2020 with a more focus on distributed technologies, and with the help of intermediaries, of third parties, stakeholders at large, which are consulted with the platform, with the help of the communities that are built up at large. We hope that it will go into a much bigger ambition in the next multi-annual framework program. So I think that's the key message I wanted to pass, and I guess, Mirko, the floor is back to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. I would like it if you could also share the slides with me so we can upload them under the event, as well as the recording, of course, so people can go back and have a look at that. We've had one question in the forum on the consultation platform, and that's towards you, Jean-Luc. So I'll just read that one out. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, given that the outputs of the cascaded funded projects are expected to have some market impact, but must also be research focused, is it realistic that these small projects with one partner only can achieve both impact and also research output?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and thanks for asking. So I think it asks the question of the critical mass. Well, first, it's not written that it should be only one single entity. So I just want to clarify that. It's actually the proposers that will define the conditions. And we have seen in our current portfolio of projects of intermediaries that it's possible to call for a small group of individuals or legal entity. So first point, that was in your question. Second point, yes, we are asking for a research. So the work program is very explicit that apps development, for instance, is not part of the funding. And there is a good reason for that. Technology development usually requires longer cycles. If we talk about human-centric internet, we are talking about things that do not necessarily have a short-term return on investment, while apps typically have a shorter return on investment, and there are other forms of funding, public and private, which are not the purpose of this call. So having said that, the question is how can focused research can have an impact. I think it's important to stress that the work program doesn't call for an impact of the individual projects, but it's a combination of them. So one line of argument is that small is beautiful. So if it's framed by things that will ensure standardization, interoperability, smooth, integrated developments, and we have examples, and the internet itself was not part of a very large investment. If you look at the past, there are conditions for an impactful action. Second, the intermediaries should be the the translator of the human-centric internet narrative into the technology development, and should be the one framing the development so that they make sense overall in terms of, as I say, interoperability, standardization, making sure there's individuals researchers go in the same direction. That doesn't mean we should exclude competitive research, for instance. On the contrary, I think a bit of competition is good, but it has to be managed. So we rely on intermediaries, but we are also ourselves will be sort of guardian of this integrated approach. And final point, we have, as part of the last call, funded a number of support action, 3 support action in total, one on the outreach of the whole exercise, one on the strategy, and one on the harvesting. And they, notably the harvesting, should be the one that will look at the most impactful projects and help them to go to the next step, either in terms of funding or in terms of visibility or in terms of European reach. So this is a very valid question, and this is how we see how impact could be achieved even through a smaller scale project.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jean-Luc. Are there other questions? Maybe I can open the floor for a quick question to Jean-Luc, if there's anything.
Well, it's always possible to contact me or Luis or colleagues, and we can happily answer offline any question.
So I have had no requests for pitching, and there have been no further questions. So I think we give a last chance into the round for people to request a pitch, or maybe just present themselves and stating why they're interested in this call. In the meantime, Paul, you have put up a slide about the details for the ICT 2018 event in relation to the NGI. So it's from the 4th to the 6th of December. The booth will be in C16 in Hall X4. And I think, Paul, you'll be there. I'll be there for some of the time. The other CSAs will also be there, as well as quite a number of the Commission representatives. So you'll have this as a contact spot. There'll also be a networking session hosted on the 4th in the afternoon. The dates are printed there, as well as a conference session the day after, also in the afternoon. So, yes. I think if there are no requests, so this is the final chance to ask a question, then I would like to ask Paul if there's anything else that we need to take from the consultation platform.
No, there was just that one question from the consultation platform. I can.
Okay. So I hope that everybody will use that space to carry on the conversation. If there's nothing else immediate now, I would say we've taken our chance, and I hope that there's resounding interest in the topic, and the Commission gets many interesting proposals. Jean-Luc or Luis, any final comments from you?
No, I mean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, thanks for organizing. I don't know if there can be a procedure for exchanging contact details of those that attended, but I guess the consultation platform is the right place to expose any idea that you could have and expose your name and organization. The participant portal itself has a section on interest and raising, so you can also have a look there of potential bidder. Now as I said, we are entering in the important zone, which is the consortium building, So please expose as much as you can, attend the meetings, look at potential partners, and yes, we are looking for a good proposal for this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much to Ales. And we have yes. So Sarah is mentioning on the chat that notifications are issued weekly on registrations and main comments. So you also get a digest when you register with the consultation platform. So with that, I think we should close the session. So thank you very much, Paul, Louis, and Jean-Luc, as well as Ales for providing the inspiration part. And there's also a webinar for the final topic tomorrow at the same time. So if you're interested in that as well, you're welcome to that too. So thank you very much, and goodbye.